Derek, the manager who had just berated Sophie, came walking back through the kitchen entrance. He was looking down at his tablet, probably checking reservations or table assignments, completely unaware of the sudden silence that had fallen over the room. He nearly walked straight into Vin before he looked up. The color drained from Derek's face so fast it was almost comical. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but no sound came out. The tablet slipped from his hands, and Vin caught it smoothly before it could hit the ground. He handed it back to Derek without a word, just maintaining steady eye contact, the kind of eye contact that made it very clear this wasn't going to be a friendly chat. "Mr. Diesel," Derek finally managed to stammer out, "I had no idea you were coming. No one told me. We would have prepared everything, made sure everything was perfect." "That's exactly why I didn't tell anyone," Vin said calmly. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried authority that made everyone listen. "I wanted to see how things really run here, how my staff is really treated when they think no one important is watching." Derek's face went from pale to slightly green. He clearly knew he had been caught doing something wrong, but he was still trying to figure out exactly how much Vin had witnessed. He forced a nervous smile and started to speak, probably to make some excuse or change the subject, but Vin held up a hand to stop him. "We need to talk," Vin said, "in the office. Right now." "Of course, absolutely," Derek said quickly. "Whatever you need. Should I call the other managers? Get the assistant manager down here?" "Just you and me," Vin replied. Then he turned to the kitchen staff, who were all still watching this unfold like it was a movie. "Everyone else, keep doing the great work you're doing. The food looks excellent. I'm proud of you all." The kitchen seemed to release a collective breath. A few people smiled nervously. One of the older cooks, a woman who had been with the restaurant since it opened, gave Vin a small nod that seemed to carry a lot of meaning. Like she was glad he was here, like maybe things needed to be addressed. But before Vin headed to the office, he had something more important to do. He walked toward the dining room and Derek started to follow him, but Vin turned and gave him a look that said, "Stay put." Derek froze in place, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Vin pushed through the swinging door into the dining room. The early dinner crowd was starting to fill the tables. Families with kids, couples on dates, groups of friends laughing together. This was what he had envisioned. This part was working, but he needed to find Sophie. He scanned the room and spotted her at a table in the corner, taking an order from an elderly couple. Even from across the room, he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she was working so hard to maintain that smile. He waited until she finished with the table and was heading back toward the kitchen. He intercepted her near the server station, and when Sophie saw him, she literally stumbled backward in shock. Her eyes went impossibly wide and she looked like she might faint. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're actually here." "You're really here?" "I am," Vin said gently, "and I need to ask you something important." "Are you okay?" It was such a simple question, but the way Sophie's face crumpled told him everything. She shook her head, biting her lip to keep from crying again. She looked around nervously, probably worried that Derek would see her breaking down in front of the owner. "Come with me," Vin said softly. "Just for a few minutes. You're not in trouble, I promise." He led her to the staff break room, a small area with a few lockers, a table, and a couch that had seen better days. He gestured for her to sit down, and she did, perching nervously on the edge of the couch like she might need to run at any moment. Vin pulled up a chair and sat down across from her, making sure to give her space. He had learned that when people were vulnerable, you didn't crowd them. "I heard what Derek said to you back there," Vin began, "and I saw you crying before that. You don't have to tell me what's going on if you don't want to, but I built this restaurant on the idea that we take care of each other, that we're family, and family doesn't let family suffer alone." Sophie looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then, like a dam breaking, everything came flooding out. "My mom," she said, her voice cracking. "She was diagnosed with cancer 2 days ago. Stage 3. The doctor said it's aggressive and she needs to start treatment immediately. But our insurance company denied the claim. They're saying it's a pre-existing condition because she had some tests done 6 months ago, even though those tests came back negative, and the treatment cost thousands of dollars, tens of thousands." Vin felt his chest tighten. He knew this story too well. He had lost his own father to cancer years ago, and he remembered the helpless feeling that came with it. The anger at a system that seemed designed to fail people when they needed help the most. "I'm the only one working right now," Sophie continued. the words tumbling out faster now. My little brother, he's 13 and he has autism. He needs special care and my mom has been his primary caregiver. I can't lose this job. I can't. We'll lose everything. We'll lose our apartment. I won't be able to pay for my brother's therapy. And my mom won't get the treatment she needs. She was crying openly now, but she kept talking like she had been holding this inside for too long and couldn't stop. I know I shouldn't have been crying at work. I know Derek is right that I need to be professional. But I got a call from the hospital during my break, and they told me Mom's condition is worse than they initially thought. They want to start treatment next week and they need a deposit of $15,000. I don't have $15,000. I barely have $1,500. And I'm so scared. I'm so scared she's going to die because we can't afford to save her. Vin reached over and put a hand on Sophie's shoulder. She looked up at him. This young woman carrying a weight that no one her age should have to carry, and he saw himself. He saw the younger version of himself who had struggled and fought and wondered if things would ever get better. He saw everyone who had ever been knocked down by life and told to get back up without any help. Derek was wrong, Vin said firmly, about all of it. You have every right to feel what you're feeling, and you're not going to lose your job. Not now, not ever. Not as long as I have anything to say about it. But I've been a mess, Sophie protested. I've been distracted and emotional, and I messed up 2 orders yesterday. You're human, Vin said. You're dealing with a crisis that would break most people. The fact that you're here at all, trying to work and support your family, that shows incredible strength. That's the kind of person I want working here. Sophie wiped her eyes with her apron again. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. But I still don't know what I'm going to do about my mom. About the money? Let me worry about that, Vin said. Right now I want you to take the rest of the night off. With pay. Go home and be with your mom and your brother. Hold them close. And tomorrow you and I are going to sit down and figure out how to handle this situation. All of it. I can't take the night off, Sophie said. We're short-staffed and Derek will be furious. Derek doesn't get to be furious about anything right now, Vin said, and there was steel in his voice. Trust me on that. Go home. Be with your family. That's an order from the owner. Sophie stood up slowly, still looking uncertain but also relieved. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. After Sophie gathered her things and left through the back door, Vin stood alone in the break room for a moment. He thought about what kind of workplace he wanted this to be, what kind of legacy he wanted to leave. It wasn't about the food or the profits or even the success. It was about whether people felt valued here, whether they felt seen and heard and cared for. He took a deep breath and headed toward the office. It was time to have a very serious conversation with Derek about what family table really meant. The office was small but functional, with a desk covered in paperwork, a filing cabinet, and 2 chairs that had seen better days. Vin walked in first and Derek followed behind him like a man walking to his own execution. The manager's confidence from earlier had completely evaporated. Now he just looked nervous and small. Vin didn't sit down right away. He stood by the window that looked out over the parking lot, collecting his thoughts. He needed to handle this the right way. Not with anger, even though he felt plenty of it, but with clarity and purpose. He turned around and gestured for Derek to sit. The manager practically collapsed into the chair. How long have you been working here? Vin asked, his tone neutral. Almost 2 years, Derek answered. His voice was shaky. Since about 6 months after you opened. And in those 2 years, did you ever read the mission statement I wrote? The one that's posted in the break room and in the employee handbook. Derek nodded quickly. Yes, of course. Family first. Respect for everyone. Creating a place where people feel valued. So you know the words, Vin said. But do you understand what they mean? Do you actually believe in them? Derek opened his mouth to answer, but Vin held up his hand. Before you give me the answer you think I want to hear, let me tell you what I saw tonight. I saw a young woman in crisis, barely holding herself together. I saw her trying to do her job despite dealing with something that would crush most people. And instead of showing her any compassion, instead of asking if she was okay or if there was anything you could do to help, you threatened her. You made her feel worthless. You told her she was replaceable. I was just trying to maintain standards, Derek said defensively. We have customers to serve. We have a business to run. If everyone falls apart every time they have a personal problem, how are we supposed to function? Vin pulled the other chair around and sat down directly across from Derek, close enough that the manager couldn't avoid his gaze. Let me tell you a story, Vin said. When I was in my 20s, before any of this happened, before the movies and the success, I was nobody. I was just a struggling actor who couldn't catch a break. I was working at a restaurant, actually. Not this one, obviously. A little place in New York. And I was going through hell. Derek shifted uncomfortably but stayed quiet. My stepfather had just had a heart attack, Vin continued. The man who raised me, who worked his fingers to the bone to give our family a good life. He was in the hospital and the bills were piling up. I was working double shifts, trying to audition during the day and work at night. I was exhausted, broke, scared out of my mind that I was going to lose the only father I'd ever known. Vin's voice was steady, but there was emotion beneath it. Real emotion that came from real memory. One night during the dinner rush, I got a call from the hospital. My stepfather had taken a turn for the worse. I needed to get there immediately. I went to my manager, a guy not too different from you, and I explained the situation. You know what he told me? Derek shook his head slightly. He told me that if I left, I shouldn't bother coming back. He said personal problems were personal problems and work was work, and the two didn't mix. He said I was being unprofessional and that he expected better from his staff. What did you do? Derek asked quietly. I left anyway, Vin said. I ran out of that restaurant and got to the hospital, and my stepfather pulled through that night. He lived for another 8 years after that. But I lost that job. And for a while, things got even harder. I was sleeping in my car, wondering if I'd made the right choice, wondering if I should just give up on everything. He leaned forward slightly. But there was another person in my life during that time, a woman who owned a small diner where I would sometimes eat when I could afford it. She knew I was struggling. And one day, when I couldn't pay for my meal, she told me it was on the house. She said everyone needs help sometimes and there was no shame in it. That one act of kindness, that one moment of someone seeing me as a human being instead of just another broke kid, it kept me going. It reminded me that good people still existed in the world. Vin sat back in his chair. When I opened Family Table, I made a promise to myself. I promised that this place would be like that diner, that people who worked here would be treated like human beings, that when they were struggling, we would help them, not kick them when they were down, because I know what it's like to be on the other side. I know what it's like to be Sophie. Derek was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Less defensive, more genuine. I have a daughter in college, he said slowly, and a son who's a junior in high school. My daughter wants to be a teacher. My son wants to study engineering. That's good, Vin said. You should be proud. I am, Derek replied. But college is expensive. My daughter is taking out loans, working 2 part-time jobs just to cover her living expenses. And my son, he's already stressing about how he's going to afford school. And I guess somewhere along the way I started thinking that if they have to struggle, if they have to work hard and push through their problems, then everyone else should too. That's not strength, Vin said gently. That's fear. You're afraid that if you show compassion, if you cut people slack, then somehow it diminishes what your kids are going through. But it doesn't work that way. Making someone else's life harder doesn't make your children's lives easier. Derek rubbed his face with his hands. You're right. God, you're right. I've been so focused on numbers and efficiency and making sure this location meets its targets that I forgot about the people. I forgot that every person here has a story, has a life outside these walls. Sophie's mother has stage 3 cancer, Vin said. She's 22 years old and she's the sole provider for her family. Her little brother has autism and needs special care. The insurance company is denying her mother's treatment. And she came to work tonight anyway because she can't afford to lose this job. That's the kind of person you threatened to fire. Derek's face crumpled. I didn't know. I had no idea. You didn't know because you didn't ask, Vin pointed out. You saw her crying and your first instinct wasn't concern. It was irritation. That tells me something has gone very wrong with how this place is being managed. What do you want me to do? Derek asked. You want me to resign? Because I'll understand if that's what needs to happen. I messed up. I know I did. Vin considered this for a moment. He could fire Derek right now. It would be easy. It would be justified. But would it actually fix anything? Would it change the culture? Or would it just be one person paying the price while the deeper problems remained? I don't want you to resign, Vin said finally. At least not yet. What I want is for you to understand what this place is really about, what it means to put family first. And I want you to prove to me that you can change. that you can lead with compassion instead of just efficiency. Derek looked up, surprise evident on his face. You're giving me another chance? Everyone deserves a chance to be better, Vin said. But this is your only one. From now on, if any employee comes to you with a problem, a real problem, your first response is going to be, how can I help? Not how does this affect my bottom line? Understood? Understood, Derek said firmly. I swear to you, I'll do better. I'll be better. Good, Vin said. Because tomorrow morning you and I are going to implement some major changes around here. We're going to create an emergency assistance fund for employees who are dealing with unexpected hardships. We're going to establish better communication channels so people feel safe coming forward when they're struggling. And we're going to make it crystal clear to every single staff member that when we say family, we actually mean it. Derek nodded, and for the first time since Vin had revealed himself, the manager looked hopeful instead of terrified. Can I ask you something? Derek said hesitantly. Go ahead. What are you going to do about Sophie? About her situation? Vin stood up and walked back to the window. The parking lot was fuller now, cars arriving for the evening dinner service. Normal people living normal lives, not knowing that inside this restaurant something important was happening. I'm going to make sure her mother gets the treatment she needs, Vin said simply. And I'm going to make sure Sophie and her brother don't have to worry about losing their home or their future. That's what family does. We take care of each other. He turned back to Derek. Now come on. We have a restaurant to run, and we're going to run it the right way. When Vin and Derek walked out of the office together, the entire kitchen staff was pretending to work while obviously watching for what would happen next. The tension in the air was thick. Everyone had seen Derek get called into the office by the owner himself. They had all witnessed at least some of what had happened with Sophie. Now they were waiting to see if heads would roll or if things would somehow be okay. Vin walked to the center of the kitchen and raised his voice just enough to be heard over the cooking sounds. Can everyone stop what they're doing for a minute? I need to talk to all of you. The kitchen went quiet. Spatulas were set down. Timers were paused. Even the dishwasher in the back turned off the water and came out to listen. This was unprecedented. The owner of the entire restaurant chain was standing right here, wanting to address them directly. I know my being here is unexpected, Vin began. And I know some of you might be worried about what's happening, so I want to be straight with you. I came here tonight because I'd been hearing things that concerned me, things that made me wonder if we were living up to the values I tried to build this place on. He looked around at each face, young people just starting out, older workers who had seen it all, people from different backgrounds and different walks of life, all brought together by this restaurant. When I opened Family Table, I had a vision. I wanted to create a place where people weren't just employees, where you weren't just bodies filling positions or numbers on a schedule. I wanted this to be a place where you felt valued, where you felt respected, where if something went wrong in your life, you'd have support instead of judgment. Some of the staff members were nodding, others looked cautiously hopeful. Tonight I learned that we haven't been living up to that vision, not completely. And that's on me. I should have been here more. I should have made sure that the culture I wanted was actually the culture we had. But I'm here now and things are going to change. He gestured to Derek, who stepped forward looking humble and serious. Derek has something he wants to say, Vin said. The manager cleared his throat. He looked nervous but determined. I owe all of you an apology, especially Sophie, who's not here right now. I've been so focused on making sure we hit our numbers and run efficiently that I forgot the most important part. The people. You all have lives outside of this kitchen. You have families and problems and things you're dealing with. And instead of supporting you through that, I've been making it harder. That changes today, right now. There was surprised silence. A few people exchanged glances. This wasn't what they had expected. Moving forward, Derek continued, if any of you are going through something difficult, my door is open, not to judge you or threaten your job, but to actually help, to figure out how we can support you. That's a promise. Vin stepped forward again. And it's not just words. Starting immediately, we're establishing an emergency assistance fund. If you have a crisis, a real emergency that threatens your family's well-being, you can apply for help. Medical bills, housing issues, whatever it is. We're going to be there for you. A younger cook in the back, a guy who couldn't have been more than 19, raised his hand tentatively. Is this for real? This isn't just talk? It's absolutely real, Vin assured him. In fact, Sophie is going to be the first person to benefit from this fund. Her mother needs cancer treatment and the insurance company is being difficult. So we're stepping in. We're covering the costs of her mother's treatment and we're giving Sophie paid leave to be with her family during this time. The reaction was immediate. People started talking at once. Someone in the back started clapping and then others joined in. The older cook who had given Vin that knowing look earlier had tears in her eyes. She came forward and without asking permission, she hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know how much this means to all of us." When she stepped back, Vin addressed them all again. "I also want to set up regular meetings, not just with managers, but with all of you. I want to hear what's working and what's not. I want to know if there are problems before they become crises. This is your workplace. You should have a voice in how it runs." Another hand went up. This time, it was one of the servers, a woman in her 40s who had been working there since the beginning. "What about training for the managers? No offense to Derek, but if we're really changing the culture, shouldn't everyone in leadership learn how to handle situations with more compassion?" "That's an excellent point," Vin said. "And yes, we're going to implement mandatory training for all managers across all our locations. Not just about efficiency in operations, but about emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and how to support employees who are struggling. This needs to be consistent everywhere, not just at this location." Derek nodded in agreement. "I'll be the first one to take that training. I clearly need it." The staff seemed to appreciate his honesty. The atmosphere in the kitchen had completely transformed. Where there had been tension and fear before, now there was something that felt like hope. "All right," Vin said. "I've taken up enough of your time. You all have a dinner service to run, and from what I've seen, you're doing amazing work. The food looks incredible. The teamwork is solid. You should all be proud of what you do here." As the staff started returning to their stations, several of them came up to shake Vin's hand or thank him personally. He took the time with each one, asking their names, how long they'd been working there, if they were happy. These weren't performative questions. He genuinely wanted to know. When things had settled back into the rhythm of service, Vin pulled out his phone and stepped into the quieter area near the back door. He had some calls to make. First, he called his personal assistant and asked her to get in touch with the hospital where Sophie's mother was being treated. He wanted the full details of what treatment was needed and what it would cost. He also wanted to make sure they knew that payment was guaranteed and that treatment should begin as soon as medically possible. Next, he called his lawyer. He wanted to set up the emergency assistance fund properly, with clear guidelines and a transparent application process. This couldn't be something that relied on his personal whim or favoritism. It needed to be structured so that any employee in genuine need could access it. Finally, he called Sophie. She answered on the third ring, her voice still shaky. "Sophie, it's Vin. I wanted to let you know that I've spoken with my team and we're handling your mother's treatment costs, all of it. And you're on paid leave for the next month so you can be with your family." There was silence on the other end. Then he heard her crying again, but this time it was different. These weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief. "I don't know what to say," Sophie managed. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me," Vin said gently. "Just be there for your mom and your brother. That's what matters right now. The job will be here when you're ready to come back." "I can't believe this is happening," Sophie said. "I was so scared. I thought I was going to lose everything." "You're not losing anything," Vin assured her. "Your family is going to be okay. Your mom is going to get the treatment she needs. And when you're ready, you have a place here waiting for you, a place where you're valued and respected." After they hung up, Vin stood there for a moment in the cool evening air. He could hear the sounds of the restaurant through the walls. Dishes clanking, people talking, life happening. This was what he had wanted to create. Not just a business, but a community. A place where people took care of each other. Derek came out to find him. "The dinner rush is picking up. You want to stick around? Maybe greet some customers?" Vin shook his head. "No, I think I'm going to do something else." "You have aprons back there that aren't being used?" Derek looked confused. "Sure, we always have extras. Why?" "Because I'm going to work the dinner shift," Vin said with a slight smile. "When's the last time you saw a restaurant owner bus tables and run food?" Derek laughed, a genuine laugh that seemed to release the last of the tension from their earlier conversation. "You're serious?" "Completely serious," Vin said. "I want to see this place from every angle. I want to talk to the customers. I want to work alongside the staff. You can't truly understand your business if you're always standing above it." Sometimes you need to be in it, so that's exactly what he did. Vin Diesel, action star and millionaire, spent the next 4 hours wearing an apron and working in his own restaurant. He bussed tables and chatted with surprised customers. He ran food from the kitchen to the dining room. He even helped the dishwasher when things got backed up. The staff watched him with a mixture of amazement and respect. This wasn't a publicity stunt. There were no cameras, no press, just a man who believed in what he had built and was willing to prove it through action, not just words. And by the end of the night, everyone who worked at Family Table knew one thing for certain. Things really were going to be different from now on. 6 months had passed since that unexpected evening when Vin had walked into his restaurant and discovered Sophie crying in the server station. A lot had changed in those 6 months. The kind of changes that didn't happen overnight but built slowly, layer by layer, until suddenly everything felt different. Sophie stood in the assistant manager's office, looking over the schedule for the upcoming week. She still had to pinch herself sometimes. Assistant manager. Her. The girl who had been sobbing in the corner, terrified of losing her job, was now helping to run the place. Life had a funny way of surprising you. The best surprise of all was happening at that very moment in a small house across town. Her mother was in the kitchen making breakfast. Actually cooking. Actually standing at the stove without getting exhausted after 5 minutes. The cancer treatments had worked. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but they had worked. The doctors had declared her mother in remission 3 weeks ago, and Sophie still cried every time she thought about it. Happy tears this time. Her brother was doing better too. With the financial pressure lifted, they had been able to increase his therapy sessions. He was making progress, connecting more, smiling more. Just last week he had told Sophie he loved her, something he struggled to express before. That moment alone had been worth everything. A knock on the office door pulled Sophie from her thoughts. It was Derek holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her one. "You've been here since 6 this morning." "Thanks," Sophie said, accepting the cup gratefully. "Just trying to make sure we're fully staffed for the weekend rush." Derek had changed too. It wasn't just one big moment. It was 1,000 small ones. The way he now asked employees how they were doing and actually listened to the answer. The way he noticed when someone seemed off and checked in with them privately. The way he had started a tradition of celebrating staff birthdays with a cake during pre-shift meetings. Little things that added up to a completely different workplace culture. "You're doing great, you know," Derek said. "With all of this, managing people, handling conflicts, keeping everyone motivated. You're a natural," Sophie smiled. "I learned from watching what not to do and then figuring out the opposite." Derek laughed, but there was a hint of regret in it. "I deserved that. But I'm glad you're giving me the chance to do better. We all are." After Derek left, Sophie walked out into the main dining area. It was mid-morning, the calm before the lunch rush. A few regulars sat at the counter reading newspapers and sipping coffee. The early sun streamed through the windows, making everything glow warm and golden. This place had become more than just her workplace. It had become her second home. The front door opened and Sophie looked up, then broke into a huge grin. Vin walked in wearing jeans and a simple black shirt, sunglasses pushed up on his head. He had started doing this, just dropping by unannounced every few weeks. Not to inspect or catch people doing something wrong, but just to be present, to remind everyone that he cared. "Hey boss," Sophie called out, using the nickname the staff had adopted for him. "Hey yourself," Vin replied, walking over. "How's your mom doing?" "She's amazing," Sophie said, and her whole face lit up. "She's actually thinking about going back to work part-time. Not because we need the money anymore, but because she wants to, because she feels strong enough to." "That's incredible," Vin said, and the genuine happiness in his voice was unmistakable. "And your brother?" "Getting bigger and stronger every day. His therapist says he's made more progress in the last 6 months than in the previous 2 years combined. Stability does that, I guess. When you're not constantly worried about losing everything, you can actually focus on getting better." They walked together toward the kitchen, where the morning prep crew was working. The energy was different now. People weren't just going through the motions. There was laughter, conversation, a sense of camaraderie that felt real and earned. One of the line cooks, a guy named Tony, who had been with the restaurant since the beginning, waved when he saw Vin. "You here to work another shift? Because we could use some help with the lunch rush." "Don't tempt me," Vin said with a laugh. I actually enjoyed bussing tables last time. Very humbling. That night became legendary, you know, Sophie told him. People still talk about it. New employees don't believe us when we tell them the owner spent 4 hours working the floor. Well, I might have to do it again sometime, Vin said. Keep people on their toes. They ended up in the break room, sitting at the same table where Vin had first heard Sophie's story. He pulled out his phone and showed her something he had been working on. I wanted you to be the first to know, he said. We're expanding the Emergency Assistance Fund to all 23 of our locations. And we're adding something new, a scholarship program for employees or their family members who want to go to college or trade school. Sophie's eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. Your situation made me realize how many people are one crisis away from losing everything, and how many talented people never get opportunities because they can't afford them. If we can change that even for a few people, it's worth it. My brother, Sophie said quietly. He's years away from college, but when the time comes, something like this could change his entire life. That's exactly the point, Vin said. We invest in people. We give them stability and opportunity, and then they thrive. It's not complicated. It's just about caring enough to actually do it. Over the next hour, staff members kept finding excuses to come into the break room. They wanted to see Vin, to talk to him, to share their own stories. A server whose car had broken down, and who had received help from the emergency fund to get it repaired. A cook who had used the new mental health benefits to start seeing a therapist for anxiety. A dishwasher who was taking online classes, working toward a degree because the restaurant had adjusted his schedule to make it possible. Each story was different, but they all had the same theme. People being seen, people being helped, people being given a chance. Later that afternoon, Vin gathered everyone for an impromptu meeting. The lunch rush had ended, and the dinner crew hadn't arrived yet, so it was the perfect time. About 15 people crowded into the dining area, curious about what was happening. I'm not going to take up too much of your time, Vin began. I just wanted to tell you all something important. 6 months ago, I came here because I was worried we had lost our way, that we had forgotten what this place was supposed to be about, and what I found that night broke my heart. He glanced at Sophie, who nodded encouragingly. But what happened next? That's what gave me hope. Because we didn't just talk about change. We actually did it. And that was because of all of you. Derek stepping up and becoming a better leader. Sophie showing incredible strength and becoming an inspiration to everyone here. All of you looking out for each other and creating the kind of workplace where people actually want to be. The room was completely quiet. Everyone hanging on his words. What we've built here, it's not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have bad days. But we've proven something important. We've proven that you can run a successful business and still treat people with dignity. You can make money and still have a soul. You can be profitable and still be kind. He smiled, and it reached all the way to his eyes. I'm proud of this place. I'm proud of every single one of you. And I want you to know that what we're doing here, it matters. Not just to the bottom line or the success of the business. It matters to real people living real lives. It matters to Sophie's mother, who got to beat cancer because she could afford treatment. It matters to families who don't have to choose between paying rent and fixing their car. It matters in ways we might never fully measure, but that doesn't make it any less real. Someone started clapping, and then everyone joined in. Not the polite applause you give at the end of a speech, but genuine, heartfelt appreciation. Sophie had tears streaming down her face, not bothering to wipe them away. When the applause died down, Vin had one more thing to say. Family Table started as a dream that people could come together, share a meal, and feel like they belonged to something bigger than themselves. I thought that applied just to customers. But I was wrong. It applies to all of us. We're the family. This is our table. And as long as I have anything to say about it, there will always be room here for anyone who needs a place to belong. As the sun set that evening and the dinner service began, Sophie stood at the host stand greeting customers. She watched Vin sitting at the counter, chatting with regulars like he was just another customer. She saw Derek in the kitchen, praising a line cook who had nailed a difficult dish. She saw her coworkers laughing and working together, supporting each other through the chaos of a busy night. This was what family looked like. Not perfect but present, not without struggles but always willing to help each other through them. And Sophie knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Dinner smells amazing. Your brother wants to know if you can bring home dessert." Sophie smiled and typed back. "Already saved you both a slice of chocolate cake. I'll be home soon. Love you." She looked around family table one more time, taking it all in. 6 months ago, she had been crying in a corner, convinced her world was falling apart. Now she was standing tall, helping to run a place that had saved her life in more ways than one. Sometimes, she thought, the best stories are the ones where people simply choose to be good to each other, where someone with power decides to use it to lift others up instead of push them down, where a restaurant becomes more than just a place to eat, but a place where broken things get put back together. That evening, as customers filled the dining room and laughter echoed off the walls, Family Table lived up to its name in every possible way. And somewhere in the kitchen, you could hear Vin's voice mixing with the others working alongside his team, proving once again that the best leaders are the ones who never forget what it's like to be human. The black SUV pulled into the back alley just as the sun was setting over Los Angeles. Behind the wheel sat one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, though right now, he was doing everything possible not to be recognized. Vin Diesel adjusted his baseball cap in the rearview mirror, pulling it down just a bit lower over his eyes. He slipped on a pair of dark sunglasses even though the evening light was already fading. This wasn't about being a movie star tonight. This was about being a business owner who wanted to see the truth. He had opened Family Table 3 years ago with a simple dream. Growing up, Vin had watched his stepfather work multiple jobs to put food on their table. He remembered nights when dinner was just rice and beans, but his family always made it feel like a feast because they had each other. That memory stuck with him through all the years of struggle, through sleeping in his car while trying to make it as an actor, through the rejections and the doubts. When success finally came, he promised himself he would create something that honored those values. Family Table wasn't just another celebrity restaurant. It was supposed to be different. The concept was straightforward but meaningful. Good food at reasonable prices, staff treated with respect and paid fair wages, a place where families from all walks of life could come together and feel welcome. He had poured his heart into every decision, from the menu items to the hiring practices. But lately he had been hearing whispers, small things, comments from friends who had visited, online reviews that mentioned staff seeming stressed or rushed. Nothing concrete, but enough to make him wonder if his vision was actually being lived out in his absence. So tonight, he was going in undercover. No advance warning to the managers. No special preparations or cleaned-up presentations. He wanted to see Family Table the way regular customers saw it, the way his employees experienced it when they thought no one important was watching. He stepped out of the SUV and locked it, then made his way toward the back entrance of the restaurant. The kitchen door was propped open slightly, probably for ventilation, and he could hear the familiar sounds of a restaurant in operation. Pots clanging, orders being called out, the sizzle of something hitting a hot pan. Vin pushed through the door and immediately the heat of the kitchen enveloped him. The staff was in full motion, working the early dinner prep. A line cook noticed him first but didn't recognize him behind the cap and glasses. The cook simply nodded, probably assuming he was a delivery person or maybe a new hire. Perfect. That was exactly what Vin wanted. He moved through the kitchen slowly, observing everything. The kitchen itself looked clean and well organized. The staff seemed to know what they were doing, moving with the kind of efficiency that comes from working together for a while. He noticed the expo station where finished dishes waited under heat lamps before servers picked them up. The presentation looked good. Everything seemed to meet his standards so far. One of the younger cooks was carefully arranging garnish on a plate, taking pride in making it look just right. Vin felt a small surge of satisfaction. These were good people doing good work. Maybe his concerns had been overblown. Maybe everything was fine after all. Then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the organized chaos of a working kitchen. It was quiet, almost hidden beneath the other noise, but unmistakable once you noticed it. Someone was crying. Not loud, dramatic crying, but the kind of soft, desperate sobbing that someone does when they're trying very hard not to be heard. When they're trying to keep it together but can't quite manage it. The kind of crying that comes from real pain. Vin stopped walking. His protective instincts, the same ones that made him so convincing in his action roles, immediately kicked in. He turned his head, trying to locate the source of the sound. It seemed to be coming from somewhere past the kitchen, toward the front of the house where the servers operated. He moved in that direction, keeping his presence low-key. A few more staff members glanced at him but seemed too busy to question who he was or why he was there. As he reached the server station, the area where waiters and waitresses picked up their orders and prepared drinks, he could hear the crying more clearly now. It was coming from just around a partition wall that separated the station from the main dining room. He approached quietly and peered around the corner. What he saw made his chest tighten. A young woman sat on a small stool, her back against the wall, her face buried in her hands. Her server apron was bunched up in her lap, and her shoulders shook with each sob she tried to suppress. Her name tag, slightly crooked on her uniform, read Sophie. She looked young, maybe early 20s, with her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had started to come loose. She was clearly trying to pull herself together, wiping at her eyes frantically with her apron, taking shaky breaths, but the tears kept coming. Vin felt frozen for a moment, unsure whether to announce himself or quietly slip away and let her have her privacy. But something about the desperation in her crying told him this wasn't just a bad day or a small frustration. This was something deeper, something serious. Before he could decide what to do, footsteps approached from the other direction. Heavy, purposeful footsteps. A man in a manager's shirt came around the corner. His name tag identified him as Derek, and he had the look of someone who had been in restaurant management for years. The moment Derek saw Sophie, his expression hardened. There was no concern in his eyes, no compassion, just irritation. He walked right up to her and spoke in a harsh whisper that somehow carried more weight than if he had shouted. "Are you kidding me right now?" Derek hissed. "We have customers coming in. I need you on the floor, not back here having a breakdown." Sophie looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. "I'm sorry, I just need one more minute." "I'm sorry. You don't get another minute," Derek shot back. "You think you're special? You think you're the only one with problems? Everyone's got problems. But we have a job to do. So wipe your face, fix your hair, and get out there with a smile. That's what you're paid for." Sophie nodded quickly like a child being scolded. She stood up on shaky legs and tried to compose herself, but her hands were trembling as she smoothed down her apron. Derek wasn't done, though. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping even lower but somehow becoming even more cutting. "And honestly, Sophie, if you can't handle the pressure of this job, maybe you need to think about whether you're cut out for it. There are plenty of people who would kill to work here. People who wouldn't waste time crying in the corner when there's work to be done. So you need to decide right now if you're going to step up or step out." With that, Derek turned and walked away, leaving Sophie standing there looking absolutely shattered. She took several deep breaths, wiped her eyes one more time, and forced a smile onto her face. It was the saddest smile Vin had ever seen, completely fake, stretched over obvious pain. Then she straightened her shoulders and started walking toward the dining room to begin her shift. Vin stood there behind the partition, his jaw clenched so tight it hurt. His hands had formed into fists without him even realizing it. This was exactly the opposite of everything Family Table was supposed to be. This was exactly the kind of treatment he had experienced himself when he was young and struggling. The kind of treatment that made people feel small and worthless. The kind of treatment that crushed spirits instead of building them up. He took off his sunglasses and removed his baseball cap. Whatever anonymity he had planned for this visit was about to end, because this situation required Vin Diesel the person, not Vin Diesel the hidden observer. Someone needed to stand up for that young woman. Someone needed to remind Derek what this restaurant was really supposed to be about. And right now, Vin was the only someone who could do it. Vin stood there for a moment, letting his anger settle into something more controlled. He had learned over the years that rage without direction accomplished nothing. What this situation needed wasn't an explosion. It needed firm action and real change. He watched Sophie disappear into the dining room, that fake smile still plastered on her face, and he knew he had to handle this carefully. Not just for her sake, but for all the other employees who might be going through the same thing. He stepped out from behind the partition, his full presence now visible to anyone who looked his way. The first person to notice was one of the line cooks who had just come out to grab something from the dry storage area. The young man did a complete double take, his eyes going wide. He dropped the container he was holding, and it clattered loudly on the floor. The sound made several other staff members turn to see what had happened. Then the recognition spread like a wave through the kitchen. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Someone gasped. A server carrying a tray of drinks nearly dropped them. Within seconds, everyone in the back-of-house area knew that Vin Diesel himself was standing right there in their kitchen. Not scheduled, not announced. Just there.